So I want to go back over the strategies for the listening passages because the listening passages seem easier than they actually are. And listening requires its own special set of strategies. When you're listening to something, you don't have the benefit of getting the information into your brain a second way. So when we're reading a text and we have the text in front of us, we're seeing it and we're hearing it, or we're seeing it and we're reading it. So there are two different ways that the information is getting into our brain. But when we're listening to a passage be read, we're able to allow ourselves to be more passive or kind of laid back. And we just kind of make this assumption that because we're understanding what's being said, that we're retaining it and that we're going to remember it. And that's not always the case. You need to be doing something with it. So I'm going to go through these strategies, but I'm going to urge you always to take notes during the listening passage, whether you're taking notes using the tool in the SBAC or whether you're taking notes on the scrap paper that you've been allowed. Do something as you're reading. It forces your brain to take the information in and to process it in another way. So you'll be more likely to remember it. So you'll be more likely to be able to answer those questions. So when we do listening passages, we need to read the questions before we listen to the passage. Even more important than when you actually read questions and you have the passage. Here, you really have to read the questions because you need to know exactly what you're listening for. It sets a purpose for your reading. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't listen to the passage multiple times. In fact, I recommend that you do. I recommend that you read the questions first and that you listen to the passage once through just to get the general gist of what the passage is about. Most of the time, the passage is going to be short. It's going to be somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes. And I recommend you listen to it once just to get the gist or general idea. And when you listen to it the second time, or read it, quote unquote, by listening to it the second time, that's when I would go through and I would be taking my notes and I would be processing the information. The more times you listen to it, the better you're going to understand it. So listen to it as many times as you need to. If you listen to it 2 times and there's still questions you can't answer, maybe you go back to the text a third time and you listen to it one more time. But you're going to read those questions before you read the passage. Have your writing utensil and a piece of paper ready, or have the notes box open on your screen. Whatever works for you. Some people do better handwriting it. Some people do better typing it. It's whatever works for you. You know how it works better for you. And today, just as an aside, might be a good time to try both ways so that you can try out and see what works better for you. Are you better and quicker by handwriting your notes and doing kind of scrap notes for yourself, or do you do a better job typing it? You need to figure it out, and today's a great day to kind of try that out. As you listen to the passage, take notes about the important information from the passage. I always tell my students, if you've gone more than 10 to 15 seconds in the audio or in the transcript and you have not stopped it to process and take notes on what you've read, you're probably not going to absorb it. And remember that story I always tell of my crazy dog Cooper, right? Choking on the pizza. If you're not doing something with this information, it's not going to get into your brain. So every 10 to 15 seconds, you want to stop, you want to pause, you want to process the information, you want to take notes on what you heard, interesting points, summarize what you said. If you have any clues about the questions, you definitely want to be jotting those down. And as you're going, you want to be trying to find the answers to the questions. After you've read the passage once, most likely twice, try to answer the questions and do the ones that you know for certain first. If you know the answer and you're 100% great, go for it. Do the ones that you know and skip the ones that you do not. When you skip a question, reread the question and then go back and listen to the passage one more time. And that time you're looking specifically only for the answers to those questions. When you go back, pay particular attention, make sure you're pausing and re-listening to any parts that you don't know. Very often the questions that you didn't get the first time might be those inferential questions, so you're really going to have to listen closely. And so go slow. Go back and try to answer the questions that you could not remember. Remember, do not leave any questions blank. So watch me as I go through and I model this process for you. You're going to watch me do it. We're going to try one together, and then I'll send you off into your Schoology folder to do some yourselves. So this is an example of what a listening passage would look like on SBAC. You would have the text to the left-hand side, and they always give you a copy of where the text is from. As sometimes you can actually process and get a hold of the actual text, the transcript of the text, but sometimes you can't. So don't always count that that's going to work for you. And then down the left-hand side, you have a series of multiple choice questions. Usually they're 3 questions. Sometimes you get 4 or 5, but it's been my experiences that you usually have 3 questions with the passage. And then, as always, your notepad is over here. So if you're choosing to use your notes, that gives you a chance to use those here. Just remember, you have to save your notes when you use them. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do my process. Now, I know my first step of the process is to read my questions and to know what my questions are asking me. So my first question asks me, which conclusion is best supported by evidence from the presentation? Rumbles of thunder do not last very long. Thunder requires an intense amount of heat. Many lightning bolts do not reach the ground, or lightning storms do not always produce thunder. So I want to see which of those statements is proven true from the text that I'm listening to. My second question, which detail from the presentation explains why the heated air surrounding a lightning bolt has no time to expand or go outward? The lightning bolt produces a lot of electricity. The lightning bolt precedes or goes before a loud clap of thunder. The lightning bolt travels quickly from one point to another, or the lightning bolt follows a channel from the clouds to the ground. And then my last question is, what are the most likely reasons the speaker begins the presentation with a question? So I need to be looking at which of these conclusions or facts are supported by the presentation. Um, why does heated air surround a lightning bolt not have time to expand? And then why does the author start with a question? So I'm going to go through my reading now, and I feel like I'm ready to read. Now, I'm going to make sure that I have my notepad open. I'm going to do it on the computer here just because that's what you're going to be able to see. If I did it on paper, you wouldn't see it. So why doesn't a lightning bolt have time to expand? So I'm just writing the questions, writing them shorthand for myself. And why does the author start with a question? Okay, so those are 2 things I'm looking for, but I'm going to take notes on anything I can find in there. So let's go. Let's get started. So I'm just going to capture what I heard so far. So I'm just capturing my thinking. So thunder is actually the rapid expansion of the heated air around the bolt. So it's not actually the lightning bolt, but the air around it. Ooh, there we go. There's my answer to the question. Moves so fast, no time to expand. All right, so let's keep listening. All right. So I'm going to go back one more time because I don't think I really figured out the answer to the first part. So I think, why does the author start with a question? Because that is her purpose and what she's going to try to answer. All right, so now that I have some notes, I'm going to move them over here and I'm going to go back to my questions. And I'm going to see which questions I'm prepared to answer. So, which conclusion is best supported by evidence from the text? Rumbles of thunder do not last very long. Thunder requires an intense amount of heat. Many lightning bolts do not reach the ground, or lightning storms do not always produce thunder. What I do know is that they talked a lot about heat. So I'm going to talk about thunder needing a great amount of heat because that is the one thing that I can prove from a line from the text. It actually was repeated here multiple times in my notes. Number two, which detail from the presentation explains why the heated air surrounding a lightning bolt has no time to expand? Okay, so basically, move so fast, no time to expand. The compressed air around the rays create thunder. Okay, so let's look at what the answers say. The lightning bolt produces a lot of electricity. The lightning bolt precedes a loud clap of thunder. The lightning bolt travels quickly from one point to another. So I think that that is the best answer because it talks about how fast they go. And then here's my last one. What are the most likely reasons the speaker begins a presentation with a question? I think to grab the reader's attention, because I know that from doing Hook. And I also think it's to introduce the speaker's purpose. So I'm just going to read the others to see if there's a better choice. To connect to the answer to the end of the presentation, not necessarily. To show the speaker's viewpoint on the subject, no. To test this listener's knowledge, no. I think it is to grab the reader's attention and to introduce the speaker's purpose. So I have used all of my notes here to answer these questions, and I feel confident that I'm ready to go on. I don't need to return to the passage, but keep in mind you might. So let's try another one together. Please open up your Schoology folders now, and please look for the listening activities folder.